Hello, good day. In this particular lecture, we are going to solve workshop number 3. This workshop number 3 is related to the concept of elasticity. The elasticity, as you remember, measures the responsiveness of one variable against the changes in another variable. In this particular workshop, we shall be solving the questions related to the supply price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply. We will be just actually, like talking about that, how this supply works and quantity demand works and how they respond to the changes in different variables. Now, basically, if you solve these questions, say, for example, the first question is about the, the price elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of what? You have got different options, like, say, for example, the quantity demanded, price, to the changes in the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied or price. Like the price elasticity of demand actually measures the responsiveness of the quantity demanded to the changes in price. So now basically, like, according to this particular, according to the definition of elasticity, like this basically are the words that you have to select. Like, say, for example, the price elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness of the quantity demanded to a change in actually the price. So, right, these all variables, or these all actually the items will be canceled out, and like you will be left with just two things, like, say, for example, the quantity demanded to the changes in price. Now the B part is that, like, you have to give the formula for the price elasticity of demand. This, for that you can see the lecture. You have got this price elasticity of demand formula available, like, that is quite easily, like, can be done. The question number 2 is about the back in mid 1990s. The government in the UK announced that for every 10% rise in the price of cigarettes, the 10% rise in the price of cigarettes, the demand was likely to fall by 6%. So here, like, that what is happening actually, like here, what is happening, that the quantity demand, the percentage change in the quantity demand is minus 6%. And the price, basically, the rise in the price is 10%. So, like, that this is the positive change here. So the next sign will be, of course, the negative sign. And, like, if you divide the 6% with 10%, you get what? Minus, like, 0.6. And this minus 0.6 is basically the elasticity. What does it show you? Like, say, for example, the question asks you, the government in the UK announced that for every 10% rise in the price of cigarettes, the demand was likely to by 6%. If this information was correct, what was the value of the price elasticity demand for the cigarettes at that time? So the value of the price elasticity demand for cigarette at that time would be minus 0.6. Okay. So that is easily solved. That can be easily solved by, if you know the formula of the percentage change in quantity demand and percentage change in price. Now, the third question is about again, in each of the following pairs, take which of the items is likely to have the more elastic demand. Give reasons for your answer. Now, which of these two kind of options have got higher elasticity? Like, say, for example, the petrol, all brands. And if you talk about one particular brand petrol, like Esso petrol, now, according to the basic definition, like, say, for example, if you have got substitutes available for something, it becomes more elastic. Now, basically, like, that petrol, all brands, basically is something that actually talking about the overall change in the price of all the brands of the petrol. But the next column, or the next basically option do you have got, is just of the Esso petrol. The Esso petrol is not actually every petrol. Like, for the Esso petrol, you have got a lot of substitutes available. So it means that for the Esso petrol, the demand will be more elastic as compared to all brands of the petrol. So it would be like, that you will actually have got this basically the option for which, like, you have got higher elasticity between the petrol all brands and the Esso petrol. Okay. Now, basically, like, what actually is the more elastic between the holiday abroad and bread? Like, the people could easily substitute cheaper holidays at home abroad if the price of the foreign holiday rose. But what actually happens with the bread? Like, the bread basically, like, is a kind of a necessity. And this is what people, like, spend a relatively small amount on the things, basically, like, relative to the bread. So the bread basically is less elastic as compared to the holidays abroad. So if you are comparing between the holiday abroad and bread, like, the holiday abroad will be more elastic as compared to bread. Similarly, if you compare the salt with clothing, Obviously the salt is basically have got less elasticity of demand, less elasticity of the the quantity demand against the price changes, because the salt basically has got a very small contribution into your overall expenditures. So whenever the price of the salt changes, it's very really noticeable. But the clothing basically has got easily it's just bigger kind of the proportion of the money that you spend on clothing. So the clothing basically will be actually the item between these two which will have got the higher actually elasticity. The question number 4 is related to the formula of the price elasticity demand is as follows. The formula for the elasticity is this. Like, for example, the formula for the elasticity is a proportionate change in quantity demand divided by proportionate change in the price. And this can be summarized for the arc price elasticity as the change in quantity demand divided by the average of the quantities. Like, say, for example, Q1 divide plus Q2 divide by 2. Similarly, if you divide the whole thing by the change in price divided by the P1 plus P2 divided by 2. The following table shows the quantity product demanded at the two different prices. Like, say, for example, when the price is 16, the quantity demand is 25. If the price falls from the 16 to 14, like the quantity demand increases from 25 to 35. Now, what you are required to do here is you have to calculate the proportionate change in quantity demand when the price falls from 16 sterlings to 14 sterling. Use the formula of the, say, for example, the arc point elasticity formula. Now, this is the formula, if you use this formula here, this particular formula will be like this. Say, for example, here, if you just calculate this, for this, you will have got this, say, for example, the change in, the quantity demand, like, say, for example, the calculate the proportionate change in quantity demand. Now, if you want to change proportionate change in the quantity demand, the change in quantity demand is, say, for example, from 25 to 35. The change in quantity demand is 10, say, for example. All right. And the average of this basically, like the quantities, like if you add the 25 plus 35, like you get 60, I'm sorry, the 60 divided by 2 will be 30. So 10 divided by 30 will be equal to what? It will be equal to 0.3, 33, say, for example. All right. Now, this 0.33 basically shows you the proportionate change in the quantity demand. Okay. Now, the second part is that, you have to find out the proportionate change in the price. When the price is decreasing from 16 to 14. Now, the change in the price, according to, this particular table is this just 2. Like, say, for example, from 16 to 14, the difference is 2. All right. If you divide them by 15, the 15 you get by adding the 16 plus 14 divided by 2. 16 and 14 is 30. 30 divided by 2 is 15. So 2 divided by 15 will be equal to what? So this is what basically is falling. So it's a minus here, minus 2. So this is 0.13, and the sign of that will be the minus. So now you can find out the price elasticity. Like, you have got both available, the percentage change in the quantity demand, which is 0.33, and the percentage change in price, which is actually 0.13. So what you can do is for elasticity formula, you can basically, divide this 0.33 by minus 0.13. So when you do this, you get this minus 2.5. This minus 2.5 is the elasticity of demand, the price elasticity demand using the arc elasticity formula or the midpoint formula. Okay. The next question is about the following diagram shows the two demand curves that cross at price P naught. All right. Now, this is what basically is happening here. If you just draw this point here, you will have got this. Like, say, for example, here, if you just do this, this is what basically is. This is P naught. Okay. So, which of the following statements are true here? Like, say, for example, if you just look at this example. Now, which of the following statements are true? Curve T1 is inelastic and curve 2 is elastic. If this statement is evaluated, like we have just learned in the lecture, that you cannot determine the elasticity of the whole curve, in one go. Like, the elasticity of the curve especially this all linear curve, changes in the different parts. For example, the top part of the curve is elastic, the middle part is unitary elastic, and the lower part is inelastic. So you cannot say, like, by looking at the slope of the curves, that whether this particular curve is elastic or inelastic. So this particular statement is actually labeled as false. Okay, so this is actually false. Okay, so the price elastic demand, actually the reason for that is the price elastic demand decreases as you move down a straight line curve. So you can only compare the elasticity at particular points. Of course, you cannot compare, or you cannot find out the elasticity of the overall curve by looking at the slope of the curve. Okay. The B part is that demand is more elastic between P0 and P1 along the curve D2 than along D1. This particular statement is true. And why is this true? So first of all, you can compare the elasticity at different points. Like, say, for example, you can compare the elasticity between P1 and P2. So if you just define, or you find out the elasticity between the P0 and P1, you can basically see, like, that this is more elastic for the D1 as compared to the D2. The C part is basically, like about the third thing, like, say, for example, the C part is about the price elastic demand between P0 and P1 in the case of curve D2 is equal to this. Okay, and which is actually true, because in the numerator you have got the change in quantity divided by the mid quantity, and in the denominator you have got the change in price divided by the mid price. So this formula is correct. So this particular statement is true. The C statement is true. The D statement is is that for any given change in the price, there will be a larger proportionate change in the quantity along the curve D1 than along the curve D2. This particular statement is false. Like, say, for example, if you you can do the calculation, you will see the opposite. All right. So this statement is false. So you may check this statement, the falsehood of this statement, by just comparing and measuring the elasticity at different points on the D1, and you can compare them with D2. In the second part, we will be solving the other questions related to the workshop of elasticity. Thank you for joining us.